You're out of your mind. Yeah, ain't it cool? You know, upon reflection, after nearly 30 years, it's honestly not cool. Well, my mom says I'm cool. Millhouse, if I told you once, I told you 1,000,000 times, you're an animated character. This is a live-action movie. Go back to the goddamn Simpsons, will you? Anyway, man, everything certainly isn't coming up, Millhouse. Anyway, I'm John Renton with the retro review of Broken Arrow from 1996, directed by John Woo, who did Face Off a year after this, Mission Impossible 2, with that incredibly insane stunt between Tom Cruise and Doug Ray Scott, who decided to just collide with each other 50 million miles in the air somehow. Okay, maybe not that high, but still ridiculously high. Pop back down, immediately start fighting. Bully. He also did Paycheck, and he hasn't really done anything of note since then. John Woo, regarded as one of the best action directors of the 80s and even the 90s and the early 2000s. And honestly, John Woo understands how to do action. He just doesn't understand how to do anything else. Broken Arrow was also written by Graham Yost, who did Justified, the TV show Justified. Hey Dude, which is a show I totally forgot about. Speed, Speed 2, Hard Rain, and many others. I retro-reviewed Speed recently. That movie has actually held up pretty goddamn well. Broken Arrow? You know, I liked Broken Arrow when I was a kid. The stars John Travolta, by the way, as Vic Deakins, or the Deke, or he's going to make many people his victims. Okay, I'm really trying here. Also, Christian Slater plays Riley, Ace of Spies. Actually, Riley, Hail Sabin. No, Chris Sabin actually wasn't wrestling at this point, or maybe he was just getting into wrestling. If you're a non-wrestling fan, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But yes, Travolta and Slater and Delroy Lindo, and also Samantha Mathis, who didn't really have even like a huge career. I mean, she's been in projects, but it seemed like she had the potential to be a breakout star at this point. Also, Howie Long, football player turned action star. Certainly not actor. Never seen Firestorm. Good goddamn Christ, that was absolutely ridiculous. And various other people are in this. And this came out in 1996, and yeah, Face Off came out a year after that. And I remember the advertisements thinking, okay, this should be actually kind of good, because Travolta had just come off movies like Phenomenon, Phenomenon, okay, enough of that. And Christian Slater was doing some good projects by this point. Then Alone in the Dark came along about 9 years later. Thank you very much, Uwe Boll, for ruining so many goddamn careers. But yeah, it's an action movie about stolen nukes, stealth pilots, and fighting, and all this gunplay, and all these loud noises and explosions. And I remember liking it when I was 15, even a number of years later when I saw it, and I haven't seen it in well over 15 years. This movie's kind of bad in retrospect. Like, a bunch of stuff happens where you're like, okay, I understand action movies are supposed to be about suspending your belief that, none of this can happen or nobody could survive this stuff. But good God, there was one point where a grenade was tossed at somebody and they dove out of the way as it was exploding. Come on, guys, come on. And then there's so much ridiculous action in this, and people surviving shots and surviving, explosions and stuff blowing up and loud noises and all this. And some movies just don't age well. Speed, that came out 2 years before this, has aged well, even with some of the ridiculous stuff about it. And speaking of things that couldn't actually happen and people surviving shit they shouldn't be able to, that at least has been fun and still is fun. Broken Arrow taps into the fun parts sometimes, but John Travolta, as good of a villain as he can be in real life, if you believe the whole Scientology thing, I mean, Battlefield Earth, he ain't a goddamn villain for life because of that. I don't know what it will take for him to be a villain, but it's not good. Here's the plot such as it is. Stealth pilots, the now former commander, Vic, basically screws over Riley when they have a boxing match first. Ali, Foreman, Bully, Rope-a-dope, all that. I bet you $20. Here's the $20. No, really. It's like, you need to have this $20. I took it out of your wallet. Oh, you screwed with me and everything. It was really so goddamn hilarious, I guess. Talking about boxing, you show your opponent something and then you do something completely different. And now for something completely different. If they had done the Ministry of Silly Walks during that, I would have actually laughed. So, Vic screws over Christian Slater's character and basically says, okay, it was all on him. I'm punching out. And it turns out it was all this big plot to crash this stealth plane, steal these nukes, and point both the nukes at major cities to get a lot of money out of people. Basically out of the U.S. government and everything. Red, from that 70s show, was in this. He wasn't as crotchety as I expected him to be, though he actually is a pretty good actor. And from there, we basically just have a typical action movie where we have Riley, Ace of Spies, and Terry, who's a park ranger, Samantha's character. They have to band together, despite not knowing each other's names. They never reveal each other's names until the end of the movie. I'm not kidding. And we've got a broken arrow, basically, stolen nukes and everything, and how much will the U.S. government pay to get it back, hence the title, Broken Arrow. And as I was watching this, I was trying to enjoy it like I did back when I was younger, and I just can't. I mean, Face Off, I haven't seen in a number of years. I plan to retro-review that at some point this year. But I decided, since this was on Hulu, why the hell not? But we get more explosions, more stuff. We get more shootouts, more, the model plane blowing up. I mean, that was hilarious. Even though things are tense between Riley, Ace of Spies, and Terry at first, they band together because Terry saw all the stuff happening, and she suddenly becomes the biggest action star of the goddamn thing, surviving a lot of stuff that most normal people wouldn't be able to survive. I'm not saying she's not tough, but it's just actually hilarious to see this. Would you mind not shooting at the thermonuclear weapons? Because the plan is, okay, they were going to use this guy who had funded the whole goddamn thing. He, him, to any pronouns, pal. Sorry, Vince McMahon. Vic, John Travolta's character, had planned this whole thing. And they were going to take these nukes and they were going to threaten to blow up a couple major American cities. They had a really good shot of a Hummer on Hummer battle, and I usually have to go to a different kind of website to see that. Always delete your search history. Good shot of the stunt drivers there. Good job, John Woo. And then at one point there was a flaming hammer because and they just happen to have all these gas tanks, and Christian Slater says, I'm going to attach a road flare to a gas tank and throw it and cause this Hummer to flame. And then we kick the doors off and we just keep rolling. Delroy Lindo was in this and ended up blowing up later in the movie, as is tradition. I think Delroy Lindo has died in at least 60% of the movies he's been in. I mean, I think he died in the 4th Iron Eagle movie. Yes, they made 4 Iron Eagle movies. Christ knows why. But eventually, they come face to face, meaning Vic and Riley. They come face to face in a mine shaft because the idea is to take these nukes, store them there, put them down the river, and then somehow manage to get them to these cities, or store them there until they can get them out, or whatever. It's like I have to expect Yosemite Sam to show up at some point. And then while they're having some shootout with some guy, they stop a grenade or they stop a guy from throwing a grenade, but not before he pulls the pin. So John Travolta has to dive out of the way. And of course, John Travolta dove out of the way as the grenade was exploding, but somehow he was fine. No shrapnel, no nothing. Just fine. Terry and Riley's plan to put the nuke down the mine shaft sort of works. The bad guys managed to rescue one, including Howie Long, who has a goddamn chin where just he could carve out another face on a goddamn cliff. And then the nuke explodes underground. Everybody's fine, except anything that was underground. I guess the graboids were destroyed. That would have been fun to actually have Broken Arrow meets Tremors. I would have liked that. Would have certainly made the movie more interesting. The government says, oh no, it's just an earthquake, just an earthquake. And after Riley and Terry manage to escape down the river just around the river bend, they see a bunch of butterflies going around. You're my butterfly, nuke, baby. The one song by Crazy Town that people remember. And then somehow, despite all this stuff happening, all these people getting killed, including the funder of the project, when John Travolta chops him in the goddamn throat, he says, well, let's just get on this train with with more henchmen And I'll send a video in. $250 million by 2 o'clock Utah time, or I'm going to blow up Denver. Okay. Should we send this? No, let's just trust a park ranger and a former pilot. Or, well, a current pilot, but somebody that was almost framed to take them down, and they eventually do. They destroy the escape chopper by taking out the fuel line. Somehow, Terry manages to survive, like being banged against the side of the goddamn train at like 60 miles an hour, even though there were points where the train did not seem like it was going more than about 15 miles an hour. But nevertheless, you want to make sure that everybody's safe, but you also want to make sure you shoot around it so you don't make the stunts look stupid. The slow-mo hammer throw towards the scientist's head that Terry did was actually hilarious. Like, whoa, 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 oh, no. And then Christian Slater, who was on the goddamn helicopter, manages to leap on there, rescue Terry, and Delroy Lindo blows up in the helicopter because, of course, he does. Why wouldn't he? For he is Delroy Lindo, and he will blow up in a movie. Howie Long forgot how physics worked because he's like, huh, I'm just going to do this with the gun. And what do you mean this wall suddenly appeared out of nowhere even though we were speeding towards a cave and I clearly saw that? And oh no, I thought my gun would have just phased through the goddamn wall. Then one guy gets killed by a spinning helicopter blade as opposed to a non-spinning helicopter blade. Kobe, no. Boy, this is going well. And then while Terry has decoupled the cars, Christian Slater, just before this, nearly gets turned into hamburger meat below a train, which he would have been actual roadkill. But no, he survives. He gets up. He's fine on a moving train where he's so goddamn close to the ground. And then Howie gets upset because John Travolta won't disarm the nuke, even though their train cars are decoupled. And he tries to have a battle with John Travolta, but gets kicked out the goddamn window when Christian Slater swings in and kicks Howie right out there, and he does a Wilhelm scream. Yeah! Why it sounds like a pterodactyl, I don't know. And Terry, meanwhile, has shot the train conductor after decoupling the cars, and it leaps off after more explosions because there's about 50 million gallons of fuel and barrels on that thing. Okay, maybe not 50 million, but a whole lot more because we need more explosions. And then, going back to the beginning, John Travolta and Christian Slater have another boxing match. But Christian Slater stands up for himself, beats the shit out of him, gets the remote detonator, stops it, and then manages to jump off just before the explosion, and the nuke goes through John Travolta, treating him like a tackling dummy because he was literally an actual dummy that flew out of there, and then the nuke's fine, and then they introduce themselves, they being Terry and Riley, Ace of Spies, and then that ends. That's it. That's literally how the movie ends. The movie at times had a fun pacing to it, but it's really kind of bad, actually, because there's so many illogical moments in it that you can't help but you can't unsee it. And better movies involving planes and explosions like Con Air would come out just a bit later, or even other stuff earlier in the 90s that come out. The bottom line is there are better action movies than Broken Arrow, like Face Off and various others, and probably about 20 others in the 90s that I can think of. It's not awful, it's just generic and kind of bad in retrospect, but not awful. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Wetland. I'll see you soon.